Ohtani did Ohtani things on Tuesday night, and John and I are going to share the details of that start, and we're going to ask a really important question. Is it difficult to be a Halo when your name isn't Ohtani or Trout? Is it difficult playing with him? Let's find out together. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We are available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. 5 stars, please. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. You can make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOnToday, and you can get started there.
Thanks for being here with us for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the #1 daily Los Angeles Angels podcast and the Super Halo Bros here with you, a.k.a. the Frisch Brothers. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
I threw him for a loop on that one. Did you see? I said Frisch Brothers, not
it threw me for a loop. I'm like, who am I?
Hey, you and I have been fans of this team for years, and it's our second season with you here at Locked On Angels. We're so grateful to be here and that you've joined us today. Hey, coming up on Friday, of course, is Fan Mail Friday. I'm sure you guys have a lot of things to say about this team so far in the 11 games that we've played. But Mike, we're 6-5, and that feels pretty good.
Yes.
On today's show, of course, we're going to recap last night's game. Then we're going to do our very first minor league report and take a look at AAA, and in particular, Joe Adell, and have a conversation about, is it hard to be a Halo when you're on a team with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani? Mike, let's get into recapping last night's game against the Nationals, 2-0.
It was a great game, and you got to give it up for that starting pitcher for the Nationals. Josiah Gray looked really, really good.
Yeah.
And gave up a lot of home runs last year, and this year has actually done a whole lot better. His last start was strong. His start last night against us was strong. We have a tendency to make young guys look really, really good.
Like Cy Youngs.
Especially
out of scrubs.
Especially when Ohtani's on the mound. But
yeah.
Shohei just did Shohei things. 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, 5 walks. Let's talk about that in just a second. And 5 Ks, John.
6 Ks.
6 Ks. You're right. I missed one. 92 pitches thrown. Okay, floor's yours, John. You want to talk about those umps in the ump show last night?
Good grief, man. I could not believe that Josiah Gray was getting all the spots that Shohei Ohtani wasn't.
Yes.
And then it just was a frustrating game. And fortunately for Shohei Ohtani, that guy knows how to battle through a tough game. He did that in Seattle when he didn't quite have his command. This time, it was the umpire behind the dish not giving him the pitches that should have been strikes. And Josiah Gray getting those against the Angels didn't help. And then, of course, it's Doug Eddings over at first base when there was a swing, and he said he didn't go around when he clearly did. And I think that's the same at bat that Shohei got a hit on. He probably would have had a no-hitter if not for that guy getting a single after Doug Eddings said, nope, didn't go around. So Doug Eddings, just go wait. Just retire.
That was a good impression of Doug. I appreciate that. Yeah, you've been around a long time, Doug. It's time to
haunted us since 2005, dude.
Yeah.
Time to go home and be with your family and just have a nice life. I really wish that for you, my friend.
Yes.
I want you to have a nice life and move on. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. 10th consecutive game for Shohei Ohtani with 2 runs or less. That passes Nolan Ryan's 9 consecutive games. He has outdone Nolan Ryan in terms of having 10 consecutive games with 2 runs or less. Incredible. He gave up just the 1 run in 19 innings, 12 walks, 6 hits. The OPS that he has hitting is at 979, and his ERA is under 0.5 at the moment.
That's good.
This was the first time that the Angels had a multi-run lead for Ohtani this season, if you can believe it.
Way to go, boys. Way to come through.
Yeah, no kidding. In the 7th inning, did you think that Ohtani was coming back in when he had 92 pitches? Did you think he was going to come back for the 8th?
I did, because he had 92 pitches.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating because when Doug Eddings did do the, no, he didn't swing. I think he threw like maybe 4 or 5 more pitches after that.
And that was the problem with the umpire strike zone
Yes.
and everything. It made Ohtani throw more than he should have, because he would have had strike 3. He would have had a swing and a miss strike 3 on that call from Doug Edding. So these umpires just extended Ohtani's at bats against the Nationals, and it was just really frustrating. So he probably would have been at a pitch count to warrant coming back to the 8th, maybe even the 9th, if he hadn't had to use so many pitches because of the umpires, right?
I think that because he had triple digits in his last outing, hitting triple digits, I think 111, 112 pitches.
111.
That's why they didn't bring him back out. But when he was at 92 and with the struggles of the bullpen, I thought, there's no way that this guy's going to stay on the bench. But he did stay on the bench. I did love this note from Garrett Anderson, who was in the booth on the TV side. And they were asking, like, how would you approach Ohtani? And he said, really, I would just pray and hope that I got lucky, because he said Ohtani doesn't have any patterns. He just goes up there and he's figuring it out along the way. And you can see that when he walked a guy and was struggling, and Gooby even said he's trying to figure out that slider. He's trying to figure out that sweeper. And then he came back after walking a guy and he threw 99, like top corner of the strike zone. And they were like, whoo. And then he threw 99 just off the plate. And they were like, okay, now he's doing something else. And
there's nothing you can figure out about Shohei Ohtani. There's no figuring out Shohei Ohtani when it comes to him on the mound. Mike, he's reached base 34 straight games. Isn't that incredible?
This just in. He's good.
He's good.
Right?
Ohtani is Ohtaniing. Yeah. The offense last night came down to Anthony Rendon and Logan O'Hoppe. Rendon had a bases loaded sacrifice fly. It was great because it went the opposite way. And I had spoken on yesterday's show about how the Angels, while they're hitting the ball hard, they're just hitting it right to guys.
Yeah.
And it was good to see Rendon at least try to go the other way with it. It did get caught, but it was enough to get that sacrifice fly. You'd like to see them score more runs in a bases loaded, no out situation, because Hunter Renfroe grounded into a double play right after that.
Right.
And then Logan O'Hoppe, man, talk about him.
Yeah, 4th home run. He has 10 RBIs. By the way, leads the team in both categories. And his home run went 414 feet. Johnny, I love him at the bottom of the lineup. And no matter what numbers he puts up, I think you got to keep him there, just simply because he is the guy that helps this lineup turn over. But when it gets to him, there's just a confidence that I have as a fan that it isn't going to be a black hole, which that lineup at the bottom has been a black hole when he's not in there.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, when he's not playing and they bring in Theis, like, it just feels like, oh man, there's just not going to be any offense there. So I can't wait till Max Stassi can come back. I would even be excited about seeing like a Chad Wallach in there because when he played for us last year, he came through. John, there was a couple of really interesting plays. One that I want to focus on was the defensive play that Hunter Renfroe made in the 4th inning. It was a ball that was going to right field, and if it gets caught in that corner, that's a triple, right? No matter who you are, you can be the slowest guy in the world. Yes, you can be the slowest guy on the team. And Renfroe hustled, put his glove down, got it, and threw it back in. And then the Nationals only got runners at 2nd and 3rd, and that kept them off the board because Angels hadn't scored at that point. And the Nats getting that first run could have been something that would have stopped the momentum of Ohtani and could have really gotten in the way of the Angels scoring runs. So good on Hunter Renfroe. That's I think what you call a defensive run save. That's an exact example of what that stat is supposed to tell us.
No kidding.
You saw it happen last night in the 4th inning.
Hey, how about the bullpen? Finally not giving us a heart attack when they come into the game. You had Jose Quijada pitching a good 8th inning. Then you had Carlos Estevez come in, and he got his first save of the season. He did finish a game the other day, but that was a 4-out situation. And so this was the first time he had an actual save in this situation.
I love both of those guys in that situation. I know yesterday you talked about the bullpen, Johnny. I just wish that there weren't these hard, fast, man-made, self-made rules like, well, this guy pitched this day, so he can't pitch that day, because what this bullpen needs is that velocity, high velocity guy, and that's Jose Quijada. And I know that,
and even Estevez.
Yeah, right. And if he goes any more than 1 inning, then he hasn't really been successful. But I think him coming in the 8th and just blowing guys away is exactly what you want. And Estevez as well, doing 1 inning, getting his first save. I think that these guys, if they can pitch them a bit more, I think it's ideal. And then having like a Herget or a Matt Moore, and then pushing the Taperas and the Loops to kind of the junk innings, the bridge innings, all of that I think is really important. And so last night was really fun to watch Quijada come in, and then Estevez really, really pitch well in that ninth inning.
Couple more notes for this game. Shout out to Wayne Randazzo for making a Ultimate Warrior wrestling reference.
Didn't he? Parts unknown. That's
he
what it was.
knows the way to our heart, man. That's exactly. And then he called the Dodger City Connect the Blueberry Pajama City Connect.
Yes, that was great. That was great. True Angel fan. He's endearing himself to Angel fandom.
That's right. Hey, listen, we did get the note after the game last night that Shohei Ohtani is not going to DH tomorrow. They're going to give him the day off. I don't blame them. I think it's a well-deserved day off. So Mike Trout is going to DH. And with Griffin Canning going on today's game versus Mackenzie Gore, it's a day game, by the way, so 1:07 Pacific time. So set your alarms. Canning is going to go about 90 to 100 pitches, Phil Nevin said. So we'll see how far that takes him into the game. And Andrew Wantz was optioned so that they could make room for Griffin Canning because, Mike, there's not a lot of guys on this team that have options, and Andrew Wantz is one of them. So they made room for him. They made room for Griffin Canning by optioning Andrew Wantz. So get set for that game today at 1:07. It's going to be a good one. We're looking forward to seeing Griffin Canning back on the bump. Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, is it difficult to be an Angel and play next to Trout and Ohtani? That's something we're going to get into and discuss coming up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel, and the NBA playoffs are here, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now at FanDuel, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. So just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up and claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to the point spreads to which team will be the NBA champions. And it's all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up and make every moment more with FanDuel.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're so glad to have you here with us. And we're doing our very first minor league report of the week. We're going to try to do this once a week so you guys know who to keep an eye on in AAA and AA and high A and single A, all the A's. And so we're going to get into our minor league report about the Salt Lake Bees. Let's go.
It's time to head down to the farm for the Angels minor league report.
Mike, the Salt Lake Bees are making a lot of noise this past week, so we're taking a look at them because with some of the issues that we've seen with the pitching and the bullpen, and it would serve to, you might assume that the next guys up to help out this bullpen will be coming from AAA. So we're going to talk about those pitchers, but let's talk about some of the hitters who have been making a lot of noise down in AAA.
You know, what's interesting about the Bees is that their starting lineup was very similar to the Angels starting lineup last season. And so it just goes to show how much depth this team has. And part of that depth is the one and only Joe Adell. And he is off to a great start in AAA. He has set a Bees franchise record, homering in 6 consecutive games, Johnny. He had 2 home runs in that 6th game, and these were crushed. He was named the Pacific Coast League Player of the Week, and he just looks fantastic. 9 games, 42 plate appearances, 11 runs, 12 hits, 4 doubles, 7 homers, 15 RBIs. He's walked 7 times. He has 12 Ks. Here's his slash line, Johnny: 353, 476, 1,088, and 1,564 OPS, so 1.56 OPS. And his K percentage, that is always a concern with Joe Adell, is a tick high at 28%, but he is crushing it in the minor leagues. Now, I know the narrative, John, is always, well, this is what Joe Adell does when he gets to the minor leagues. However, what this does is raise his value and get eyes on him so that either we bring him up and maybe something clicks for him, or we can dangle him as trade bait or as somebody that we can go and get maybe a few bullpen arms for. The thing that I did see on Twitter yesterday and the day before was, we have to remember Hunter Renfroe is only on a 1-year deal.
Right.
Maybe Joe Adell finally puts it together, finally gets his head together, and is in that starting outfield in 2024.
Yeah, I understand the notion of maybe making him a trade piece and getting some bullpen help, maybe a true closer. And that's certainly something that can happen, perhaps maybe a few months in. But you're right, Mike. My one hesitation is who's going to play the outfield next season then, because you don't have Hunter Renfroe after this year unless the Angels offer him some sort of extension or sign him to a new contract, which could very well happen.
And I'd like to see that.
I think at the moment, I think you give Joe Adell, we've been saying it all along, give him that season in the minors to get his head right, to get his defense right, and to get those strikeouts down. And so far he needs to get that strikeout percentage down a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for him to build his confidence by having those 7 home runs, 6 in consecutive games, and then the 7th in the same game, that's only going to build his confidence. Hey, I pulled these stats before I saw Trey Cabbage go off in the Bees game last night, who happened to hit a grand slam, by the way.
Now, for the record, because I saw that, I did add a home run and 4 RBIs to his total
You're my
stats,
hero. Thank
just
you
so
for
you
doing
know.
that.
But I didn't mess with the slash line. So some numbers are accurate and some numbers may not be accurate, but the overall numbers are really great.
Yeah, 8 games, 27 plate appearances, 7 runs, 10 hits, 1 double, 2 triples, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, 1 walk, 5 Ks, and a stolen base. Mike, he's batting .385. On base percentage is .407. Slugging .692. That's good for a 1.099 OPS. Trey Cabbage is certainly somebody who could come up and help this lineup out if the Angels needed somebody like Trey Cabbage and his bat to help out the offensive side of things.
Now, speaking of offense, I want to talk about 2 guys who we would love to see be better offensively, but they have just really struggled in the majors, and right now they're struggling in the minors, and that's Andrew Velazquez and Mickey Moniak. Velazquez is putting up similar numbers that he did in the majors last season. Really low batting average. On-base percentage is a tick high. His slugging's really down. He's a .540 OPS, so that gives you kind of a sense as to where he's at. He's striking out 26% of the time, and so he's really swinging and missing. And then Moniak, who had a great spring, and Philly fans will tell you this is what he does, but Moniak has played in 8 games. His slash line, 206, 289, 294, 583. Now, in Salt Lake and where the Bees play in their division, it's more of an offensive league.
Yes.
And so for him to be low offensively, those stats to be low is a tell, I think. He's struggling, right? 31% K percentage. Yeah. And so right now, if you're going to bring up an outfielder, Joe Adell is the guy and Mickey Moniak is not.
Hey, taking a look at the pitching, Chase Silseth, baby. He also got Pacific Coast Player of the Week at the starting pitcher position. Listen to this: 2 starts, 2 wins, 11 innings pitched, no earned runs, 3 hits, 3 walks, 13 Ks, a .055 whip, a .081 average against. Mike, he's on pace for a 10.64 Ks per 9, so about 10 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings, and a 125 BABIP. So if you're frustrated with all the bloops that the Angels' opponents like the Jays and the Nats have been getting against the Angels, a 125 BABIP would be a very good thing if Chase Silseth came up for a start. And then listen to this: Kenny Rosenberg has been pitching as a starter. He started 2 games. He's got a win, 9 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 9 hits, and no home runs, actually. He hasn't given up a home run. 4 walks, 12 Ks, a 1.44 whip, a 265 average against, 12 Ks per 9, and a 409 BABIP. So that BABIP's a little bit high.
That's super high.
Might be a little bit concerning there, right? Mike, talk about Austin Warren, one of our faves here at Locked On
Yeah, Austin
Angels.
Warren got DFA'd, and then he got signed back with the Angels, and now he's in the minor leagues. Johnny, what's interesting about Austin Warren, he's putting up some good numbers, but what's interesting is he's been getting save opportunities.
Yeah.
So they're allowing him to pitch at the end of games. And then another guy who's actually having a pretty decent minor league run is Chris Davinsky, who is a former major leaguer and was really great with the Houston Astros, but has really lost it. And he's figuring it out, at least in AAA. Some of his numbers are really strong. The average against is kind of high. He has 4 really good pitches and pretty standard right now in his miles per hour when it comes to his fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And then Johnny Zach Weiss is down there, and he's scuffling. Why don't you talk about his numbers?
Yeah, scuffling a little bit. He gave up a home run in one of his relief opportunities. He did get a win. He's got 2 innings pitched, but because of that home run, he's got a 13.5 ERA and a 4.29 WHIP.
Ouch.
Woo! Ouch. But listen, he's been in the 64th percentile of fastball velocity, and he sits around 94, 95. I know we've been talking about we need a guy with velo in this bullpen. But listen to the spin rate on the fastball. It ranked in the 91st percentile. Last year, he got 46.7% of players to pull their hits, 21.9 topped, so they hit the top of the ball and drove it into the ground, and 31.3% of hitters went under the ball, which induces a fly ball or a pop-up. So a couple takeaways here from the minor league report, Mike. Joe Adell, obviously, I think is the next outfielder up. If something were to happen to Ward or Trout or Hunter Renfroe, knock on wood, I think that you would see Joe Adell be called up. I think Chase Silseth is breathing down the necks of starters like Jose Suarez and a pitcher like Tucker Davidson, given how well he's done in AAA so far. And like you said, it's not easy to pitch in AAA because of the altitude.
Yeah.
And finally, the ready for the major relief options in AAA are not necessarily the hard throwing guys that we feel like we're missing, but guys who have been there before and can get it done if a change needs to be made. So the Angels have options. They are not stuck with the bullpen options that they've been using. I know we've all been frustrated, but they actually have some options to consider moving forward.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by the Ultimate Pro Baseball GM game. Be a major league general manager and manage your own franchise by downloading this game. It allows you to manage every strategic aspect of the franchise, playing through the seasons, leading your franchise and your fans to glory as you build up a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for hiring the right coaches, staff, and managing the team finances. You're also in charge of scouting and drafting players, managing through difficult personalities and injuries. You're navigating your franchise through free agencies and all of the ups and downs of the season. All of this in a challenging and very realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play it whenever and wherever you want. And Locked On Angel listeners, you get a 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in the game store. You can download it in a few ways. Go to probaseballgm.com, probaseballgm.com. You can scan the code if you're watching on YouTube, or you can look it up in the App Store. Probaseballgm.com is the best place to go. The ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today.
Mike, you and I were having a conversation, not on the pod, just privately, just what it would be like to play next to Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. And does that make it difficult for players to play on the Angels just because you're with these 2 generational superstars? And here's what we mean by that. This is something we've been thinking about, and not even in just this year. I know there's a lot of urgency to get to the playoffs in Shohei's last guaranteed year as an Angel, but there's a narrative that the Angels need to get Trout and Ohtani to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Of course they do. We do not want to see them sit out in October once again. But when that doesn't happen or the Halos lose, the blame doesn't necessarily fall on Trout and Ohtani because they're usually the ones keeping us in the game, right? They're usually the ones contributing, but it does fall to other players in the organization. You see tweets like, oh, the bullpen blew it.
Yeah.
And you see, DFA Rendon or DFA Renfroe. Like everybody likes to DFA even though they don't know what DFA means.
Yes, right.
Then there's these types of tweets. The Angels are the first MLB team to have a pair of former MVPs, and Ohtani and Trout each get an extra base hit, but have the rest of the team go hitless since the Yankees did it with Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris in May 6, 1962. How long did you spend on Baseball Reference, you nerd, to find that stat?
Just so you could tweet it and be mean.
And then, of course, the Tungsten Armo Doyle tweets, something that is always connected to like a ridiculous stat from baseball's past and how Trout and Ohtani broke that record and then the team still lost. So those narratives are frustrating for us as fans, but I can't imagine what it's like for the players on the team when they aren't living up to the expectations and they're wanting to do their best to get Trout and Ohtani to the playoffs, but I'm
Right.
sure that's pretty frustrating.
Yeah. So, fans, online people, they have their perspective. And the question we were wrestling with is, I wonder what the players think about Trout and Ohtani. What's it like to play with them? And Jack Kruger, who actually played with the Angels in the organization for 5 years, he tweeted out some interactions that he had with Ohtani. And on his Twitter handle, he tells the story of when he left the team and went to the Rangers and then came back to play the Angels. Ohtani saw him and he said Ohtani stopped, said hi, and remembered his name. And then Jack actually tweeted this. He said, I can't overstate how insignificant I was to Ohtani's career and life, and yet he treated me with the highest level of respect.
That's
It would have been completely reasonable for him to forget who I was, but he didn't. And then he said, from the little time that I spent around Shohei, I got the sense that this is how he lives, joyfully and respectfully. And that's not just the narrative around Shohei, John. Nolan Arenado actually said some good things about Trout at the WBC. Why don't you share that?
Yeah, Nolan Arenado was asked what it was like playing with Trout at the WBC. He said he's bringing the best player in the world into the clubhouse. He's a great teammate, talking about the game. He's always willing to talk about hitting, and he works hard, man. This guy works his butt off. Now I know why he's the greatest. So it's great to hear from Kruger, and it's great to hear from Nolan Arenado just how great it is to be around guys like Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. So it really comes down to being around those two is a pleasure because they treat people,
they're good people
with
good
respect.
Humans.
So the narrative comes from outside of the organization, right? It's not anything that Trout and Ohtani are doing. They're actually making it better for players next to them, right?
Yeah, sounds like it. And I think that we as fans are overanalyzing and overthinking about like what the dynamic is. And when we read every facial expression of Shohei as, oh, he's gone. When we lose the game, oh, he's gone. All of those things. I just think that ultimately with these two guys, the pressure isn't coming from them. The pressure is actually coming from the media and from the fans.
Yeah.
I do think that they, as the non-Trout, non-Ohtani players, I do think that they feel the weight.
Sure.
I think that they want to get these guys to the playoffs. But the good news is that because Trout and Ohtani are good humans, I think that there is a brother-to-brother, friend-to-friend relationship that is being built, and the pressure that they're feeling might even be eased because they have a really healthy relationship with these two guys.
You can observe that in the way that Bally Sports interviewed a bunch of players and said, what if Trout and Ohtani go one-on-one in the WBC? And the way you saw like Jared Walsh speak about those two, the way you saw a bunch of the other Angels talk about Ohtani and Trout, you could just see that there was admiration for those guys and that they respected them and felt like they were friends, that they were good people and had a close relationship, right?
So you know where the pressure's coming from? It's us. It's coming from the media.
Me?
It's coming from the fans, right? It's coming from those who are
I'm the problem. It's me.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's coming from everybody freaking out. Because I get that we want Ohtani to go to the playoffs. We don't want to lose him. But at this point, we're 11 games in, but everybody is just living and dying with wins and losses and assuming that all of this is happening. It reminded me of the early 90s, late 90s Chicago Bulls, John. Huge Bulls fan, loved Michael Jordan. And there were two players that Jordan has come out and actually talked about how he wanted to protect them from the media and from the fans. In the first three-peat, it was B.J. Armstrong. In the second three-peat, it was Scotty Burrell. Armstrong was a pretty good player. Scotty Burrell could have been a really great player, but Michael Jordan actually said, I don't want Scotty Burrell talking to any of the media people. In fact, if you watched the 9-part series that ESPN did, The Last Dance. In that, he actually to the camera says, I don't want any of you talking to Scotty and letting him know that like we're playing the Knicks and it's Patrick Ewing and John Starks. Nobody talk to Scotty because I need him. I don't need him to be freaking out. And the next game he went out and scored 24 points, had 10 rebounds, and was awesome, right? And that just reminded me of hearing the good stories of Trout and Ohtani. It's kind of an affirmation, like they are really trying to make this a great clubhouse, a great culture, a great camaraderie. And when we talk about the pressure, I think these guys do feel the pressure, but it's not coming from those superstars. It's coming from outside of that because we as fans and MLB media and MLB fans are freaking out and placing all of our anxiety and fears upon this organization, when in reality, they may not be as crazy as we are.
I love the relationship that Shohei has with the other starting pitchers. You can see that they're always talking and discussing a game plan. And then Mike Trout, his whole career, man, especially as he's gotten older, comes back into the dugout, tells the next few batters, like, hey, watch out for this.
Yes.
Hey, when he does this, that means he's going to throw a slider. Like, he's always given notes like that. So to me, I really just see the camaraderie between Trout and Ohtani and the rest of the team. It's a benefit to everybody. And yes, we all want them to get to the playoffs. Yes, we all want them to be successful. And that pressure to do that isn't so much from Trout and Ohtani themselves. They're not saying, thanks a lot, guys. They're there to help out the other players on the team and help make everybody better. I truly believe that.
So if the Angels lose, stop tweeting, Ohtani's gone, because you're a nerd. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. Y'all playing fantasy baseball. Matt and Dom are going to help you win your league, and you can find their podcast wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and they're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Angels, and you can follow Super Halo Bros at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Of course, you can find us on YouTube because you're already here. If you're watching on YouTube, we post our post-game wrap-up videos on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, so check those out. Hey, Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Hey, Griffin Canning's on the mound today, and so we're going to talk about that tomorrow.
107.
And we're going to talk about the details of what he did well, what he didn't do well. And then, John, we're going to actually wrestle through, depending on how he does, should we choose him over Jose Suarez? Should we choose him over Tucker Davidson? So a lot to talk about. So join us tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Nationals are a good team to get your first start back in a year and a half against. Yeah. So hopefully he can go out there and do his thing. All right, friends, we hope that you enjoyed today's show. Thanks for being here. Until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for watching Locked On Angels and listening to Locked On Angels, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.